Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. 52% of the global population are affected by headache disorders every year, and with 14% reporting migraines. And millions of people turn to over-the-counter remedies to deal with these issues. And however, a lot of these products are not intended for long-term use. And over-the-counter remedies may be actually masking underlying issues and can become ineffective over time, and many even start to cause other issues. Many people are unaware the changes in their lifestyle may actually be effective in reducing the frequency of these headaches. One of these changes that people can do is through nutrition. And this is why we're really excited today to be joined by Dr. Stephen Zodkoy. And Dr. Zodkoy is a burnout expert, published author, and the owner and CMO of the Resiliency Program. So we're going to talk about natural ways to help with headaches, burnout, and Dr. Zodkoy's Resiliency Program. So I'm going to... Oh, here you are. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
They're quite good. How are you?
I'm very good. Just going to turn up my volume a little bit. So, it's so nice to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time. This is such an important topic.
Yeah, it's amazing, in this in this day and age, so many people are just burned out, have had enough, and it's leading to so many symptoms. And the way our healthcare system works is they don't really recognize dysfunction, which is what burnout is. They only really recognize diseases. But, as you know, most of the people who are unhealthy, most of the people who have symptoms, they don't have a disease. They just have dysfunction and toxicity. And we need a new breed of doctors to step up and recognize that dysfunction, toxicity is an issue that we need to deal with before it becomes a disease.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you for this. And so, before we delve in deeper, could you tell our audience a little bit about your background, like how you became a burnout and adrenal expert?
Sure. So I went to chiropractic school. I've been practicing for 32 years. And one of the things I noticed, it's a crazy thing, is I know exactly where I was. I was walking out of class one day, and I looked around, and there were, 200 students around. And I said to myself, I go, oh my God, I'm going to be just one of hundreds. And I said to myself, I've got to do something different. And at the time, I was taking classes to become an applied kinesiologist, which is all about working with the emotional part of health, the structural part of health, and the biochemical part of health, all at the same time. And I really enjoyed the nutritional start of it. So I actually started to become a nutritionist at the same time I was a chiropractor. And then I I received 2 board certifications. Both it's unique because I have what's called a certified nutritional specialist and a diplomat in clinical nutrition. And these are unusual because they're both, they're not restricted to chiropractic profession. There are medical doctors and researchers, PhDs, and chiropractors who all go for the same actually level of expertise, which is nice because a lot of times there's conflicts. But when it comes to clinical nutrition, when it comes to functional medicine, everybody's aboard with the same idea. And then the next step was, so chiropractic is excellent for helping with the structural problems. Clinical nutrition was awesome for helping with the biochemical issues. And then there wasn't a lot to be done for the emotion. And then I took a class called Neural Emotional Technique. back in like 1996, a long time ago. And this was a great way to incorporate ways of dealing with past traumas, stress, anxiety by using the acupuncture meridians. And by putting all three of those things together, I'm able to really look at somebody when I treat a person. I'm not just looking at them structurally or biochemically or emotionally. I try and look at them, with all three things in focus. And sometimes it'll be 80% emotional. Sometimes it'll be 70% structural. But I have the ability to look at all of that. And by doing that, we're really much better at getting to the root cause and healing people. So how did I become a burnout expert? That's my start here is one day, this is probably about 15 years ago, a colonel brought their daughter in because they had a swing in their leg. They didn't walk straight. They actually swung their legs out. And when that happened and she came in, she's like, we've been to, 2 orthopedists, a couple of chiropractors, and nothing's really helping. And when I started to work on this girl who was like 14, 15 years old, I realized that a lot of her structural problem was from emotional stress, even though she was very, very young. And so we went about correcting her emotional stress and giving her nutritional support to help her deal with her emotional stress. And her stress happened to be with her mother being deployed to Iraq. And she, within a week, was walking normally. And so the next step was this Marine colonel asked me if we could actually do it for Marines with PTSD. Mm-hmm. And so we put together what's called the Resiliency Program. And over time, we opened up clinics from Albany to Mississippi, put thousands, this was before COVID. And we basically developed a resiliency program for burnout. We never called it PTSD because PTSD has a connotation that you're never going to get better. Burnout is you left everything on the field and we want you to heal. And so by using the NET and clinical nutrition, we were able to bring people back from their PTSD, their past traumas, their anxiety, and actually get them to heal. And we actually I actually published 2 papers on this. And our end result was that after about 6 months of working with these Marines, the average Marine that we were dealing with reduced their physical and emotional complaints by over 80%. And that basically was the launch for what we do. Wrote a book on it called Misdiagnosed, the Adrenal Fatigue Link. And that's what I've been doing.
Wow. This is so amazing. Like, you just told multiple, like, beautiful, really impactful stories. Yeah, wow, this is really amazing. So, like, in your words, like, what is burnout?
So I like to say burnout is when you cannot handle any more physical or emotional stress without having a physical or emotional symptom. That's my definition of burnout. And what's interesting is the term for burnout's probably 40 years old. And the problem with it is that it's old. It was pre-COVID. It was pre-9/11. It was 20-year war that we were involved in, and it was pre-technology. And so the problem is that the real term for burnout is, overburdened by stress at work. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have a delineation between work and home life anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming less and less of a delineation because, one, you're constantly on your phone. You're constantly getting emails. You're constantly getting texts. People are working from home now. Mm-hmm. And there's no separation. I know a lot of people who get up at 5, work for a couple hours, take care of the kids for a couple hours, work for a couple hours, cook dinner, and then go back to work. There's no clear cut. when my father, when my father got home from work in the 70s when I was growing up, he got home from work at 6 o'clock. That was it. He didn't freaking call in the work.
Yeah.
He didn't have a computer. The one time he had an emergency, it was a true emergency. My father worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and there was a bombing, and it was a true emergency. It wasn't like somebody needed paperwork right away. And all the times I remember, he got one phone call from work, and now people are working all the time. My daughter, who just started working, she's very proud. She's an engineer for Mars Wrigley. Go Zoe Zodkoy. And she runs a team that is part in Poland, part in Britain, part in the United States, and part in India. And she's getting phone calls all the time.
24/7.
Yeah. And, we had to have a conversation. If you don't want to get burnt out, yeah, everybody's around, but 7 o'clock at night, turn your phone off and pick it up at 7 o'clock in the morning, because you can't be taking calls at 10 o'clock at night or even looking at texts 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and expect to be rested and functioning. It doesn't work that way. Burnout occurs because we're doing too much and we're not getting enough reward. If you're working 16 hours a day, even just looking at your phone, you're not getting any more reward than if you just put in a solid 8. So why are you doing it?
Yeah. So how can burnout manifest itself in physical symptoms like headache? What are other symptoms that people can feel?
So when you have burnout, one of the biggest things we see is that your adrenal glands there's different stages. At first, when you're working really hard, your adrenals will match your work level, and they'll start pumping out a lot of adrenaline and a lot of other hormones, or cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, glucosteroids, aldosterone. They pump out a whole bunch of them, and people will say, "Oh, I'm a night owl." Or I really do well with stress. You don't do well with stress. Nobody does well with stress. What's happening is you're actually just pumping out a lot of hormones. So you're meeting the stress need. And so you feel good about it because you're getting the work done. It's like pulling an all-nighter and going and taking the test. You're running on adrenaline. But you can only do that so long, because the autonomic nervous system, the one with the fight or flight system that we're talking about, that we all heard about in school, was designed for short term. The dinosaurs attacking you, you got to run away. The tiger's attacking you, you got to run away. There's a fire, you got to run away. It wasn't meant for this chronic, continuous, low-grade stress of work calling you all the time, running the kids from here to there, worrying about money all the time, the stress of the craziness, no matter what you believe in for politics, of one side against the other. We weren't meant for this crazy, constant bombardment that's chronically stressing us. Go back, I'm 57. I know I look 55, but when I was growing up, if you wanted the news, your choices were a newspaper in the morning, and the 5 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news. It wasn't constant bombardment with this hysteria of what's going on, everything, the possibility of what's possibly going on, just being shoved in your face all the time. And that causes a chronic stress. So your body, your adrenals are constantly pumping out hormones, and they're pumping out these adrenal hormones, these cortisol. And this starts to cause a problem, because at first you're doing great with it, so you don't sort of taper back your stress level or your activities. But eventually what happens is you reach a peak. It's called the Yerk-Donaldson. And it's a peak. You can only handle so much more stress, and at this point you're doing great. And then you start to go down. And what happens is your body can no longer produce enough hormones and neurotransmitters to meet your stress. And so you start to develop symptoms. You'll start to get insomnia. You'll start to get aggravated. You'll start to get fatigued. And this is important because when you are under a lot of stress and you're pumping out cortisol, that's the biggest one that everyone talks about. You release a lot of sugar, it's called glucagon from the liver. And this glucagon from the liver is running around your blood. Now, the reason that happens is, again, you needed that sugar to run away from the dinosaur. But we're not running away from the dinosaur. We're sitting and watching the news and stressing out. We're sitting and reading you're not burning that glucose. So the body keeps trying to shove it into cells. And the cells go, I don't want it. So you start producing more and more insulin to try and get it into the cells. And people start to become insulin resistant. And when they start to become insulin resistant, what do you do with it? You start to form it into fat. And that's why people, when they start to get burnout and they can no longer handle the stress and the cortisol starts to shrink, but they're still producing a lot of sugar, they start building up that belly fat.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is that when you start storing glucose as fat, that fat also stores a lot of other toxins. And so now you're starting to store glucose as fat. You're starting to store toxins, and all of these lead to more and more symptoms. And as your ability to produce hormones and neurotransmitters drops, you start to get anxiety. You start to get depression. You start to get mood changes. You get what's called ligament laxity, where your joints get looser, so your muscles become spasm. Common disease, your blood pressure will start to drop and then skyrocket. So people will get dizzy, they'll get vertigo. And then all of these loose ligaments will lead to a lot of headaches and chronic illnesses. And so it becomes a torrent of problems. And with this, people go to their doctor, and the way medicine is done today is completely wrong. And the doctor is treating the symptoms. Oh, you have a headache. Here's a pill for it. Oh, you have a shoulder problem. Let me do a cortisol injection for you. Oh, you can't sleep. Here's a sleep medication. Oh, you have anxiety. Here's an anti-anxiety medication. And what they don't realize, and what we really need people to doctors to realize, is that your inability to sleep, your anxiety, your belly fat, your fatigue, your headaches that you're waking up with, your joint pain is really coming from one major issue, which is burnout.
Stress. You're right, burnout.
And burnout, stress, anxiety, it's all coming from one issue. So a lot of times we take these untreatable patients, and really what I'm looking for is what's the core problem that caused burnout. And that's how, excuse me, that's how we're able to bring these people back from the edge when nothing else worked. Because when you look for the core problem, you're able to actually heal the root cause, and then their bodies and their minds start to heal. And it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and also many issues you just mentioned, they're like serious issues. Like if you don't take care of these issues, it could cause even more, like a major like breakdowns and then major hospitalizations and later on, which is like something people should really trying to prevent.
Well, I think the problem is that, it starts off with, people start taking an anti-anxiety medication and they never get off of it. So you're 40 years old, you're 50 years old, and they have no problem keeping you on anti-anxiety medication, sleep medication, antidepressants for 30 years. But the problem is that since you've never fixed the cause, you're just going to get another symptom. And what's that symptom going to be? Is it going to be vertigo? Is it going to be fibromyalgia? Is it going to be, joint pain? They just keep getting worse and worse. And that's the biggest issue. A lot of people don't realize that there's two things. One is anti-anxiety and antidepressants weren't designed to be taken every day. When they were tested and approved by the FDA, they were 90-day programs. So all these people who have been on Lexapro and Prozac for years and years and years are now addicted to it. And there was an article in the New York Times, I think it was called Addiction to Antidepressants. And what they've found is that people trying to get off antidepressants that have been on it for so long, it's changed the way their brain works. And they're now more addicted to the antidepressants than people are to opioids. That's how bad it is. And if you don't go back to the root cause that somebody is burnt out, and you give these antidepressants and these anti-anxiety medications and these sleep medications, all you're doing is building an addict. You're just, these people are just having a problem and they're going to become addicted to their medication. And like any addict, it's going to change and they're going to need more. So there's where the real risk comes in. And then, we have a total loss of quality of life. When you're burnt out, there's no quality of life. And the reason for this is when people are burnt out, they're really using up their sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is, let's get the job done. Let's get it done. Let's put the energy forward and really, move ahead. The problem with that is there's an opposite part of it called the parasympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. And the parasympathetic nervous system is what allows people to enjoy life. It's what allows them to sleep well. It's what allows them to eat food and enjoy it, digest food. It's what allows them to enjoy sex and enjoy the company of other people. And the body is very, very efficient. So if you're just go with the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, it just shuts down the parasympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. And what happens is all of a sudden you can't digest your food. You're not producing enough stomach acid because the body's like, you're not using that part. I'm not going to do it. You're not excited to be with people. You have no desire to have sex or have companionship. Your sleep starts to get interrupted. So there's a lot of physiological changes that come about. And then all of those lead further into anxiety and depression. And you start to get into this vicious circle. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times when we're treating patients, not only do we have to rebuild the adrenals, we have to re-engage the parasympathetic nervous system so that they start to get quality of life back. Interesting fact, World Health Organization says that, like, if you're in Japan, you have a high quality of life until your early 80s. Hong Kong, Japan, high into your early 80s. In the United States, people lose quality of life in their early 60s. So you're talking about the last, decade, 15 years of your life is just miserable. And it's because we don't value healthcare in this health in the United States. We value symptomatic relief, and we value money over health all the time.
It's unfortunate. Those last 20 years supposed to be the best life.
Right. But, you look at people, and it's not unusual for somebody 55 years old to be on 2 antidepressants or an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety, a sleep medication, and blood pressure medication. And of course, everybody's got to be on a statin because, that's what's going to save the world, even though, cholesterol and statins happen to be one of my biggest pet peeves in the world. I know it's not part of this conversation, but I'm going to rant for 1 minute if it's okay.
Please do. Please do.
So I'm a numbers guy, and I like to do research. I like to read research. And I like to know what's going on, because it's not good enough that you heard something on the news. And it's definitely not good enough that the FDA said this. So if you're on a cholesterol medication, you're probably a fool. And I'll tell you why. Because you've been handed a bag of lies. So the true numbers, and these are the true numbers. This is from Merck, Lipitor. What they did was they took 5,000 people. They put on Lipitor for 39 months. And at the end of 39 months, they found that they had 50 less cardiovascular events. So you basically say that if you put 5,000 people on a statin, that after 39 months, you've helped 1%. Now, this is where it becomes a scam. Two things. One is 16% of those people will have some sort of serious side effect from taking the statin. Okay, so we're helping 1%, but 16% of the people are going to have a serious side effect. And when I mean serious side effect, I mean muscle pain. I mean decreased cognitive ability. I mean stroke. I mean cancer. If you're over a certain age and you're taking a statin, it raises your chance of cancer. And it raises your chance of cancer greater than it helps your chance of cardiovascular disease. Remember, this is Merck's numbers on Lipitor. And Lipitor happens to be the best statin available. The other part that makes this a total scam, and here's where it drives me insane. When they did this study, and they did these 5,000 people, they were high-risk people, diabetes, risk of cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, family history. You know what they didn't have as a risk factor? High cholesterol. So,
Wow.
right. Again, Lipitor's information, it's well published. So now you have 1% of people it's helping who had some sort of risk of cardiovascular disease. And now who are we giving it to? We're giving it to everybody who has high cholesterol over 200, which was never part of the study. So
That's crazy.
best it helped 1%, but now it's probably helping 1 in 10,000. And this brings us to a point, and I always I always use this, this is what's wrong with healthcare. You know, you think the FDA is looking out for you. They're not. You think the pharma is being held responsible. They're not. And you think your doctor knows. They don't, because they're only taking the information that they're given. And who's giving them the information? Big pharma. This is how we ended up with the opioid crisis. This is why people are now addicted to antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, sleep medications. This is why after 30 years of people being on statins, there's no change in the amount of people who are dying. So what we're trying to do, or when we're dealing with functional medicine physicians and we're talking about burnout, what we're trying to do is get people to realize that there are core reasons why you have a problem. There's a core reason why you're a diabetic. Or type 2 diabetes. There's a core reason why you have fatigue. There's a core reason why you have migraines and headaches and GI problems. And if you're treating the symptom, you're just going to end up with a low quality of life at 62 and being miserable for the next 20 years until you die. If you spend a year or 6 months rebuilding yourself and taking care of the core problem, yes, it may be annoying. Yes, it may cost you a few dollars, but your quality of life is going to be dramatically better. And isn't that what it's all about?
And that's priceless.
It really is. You know, people don't value their health until they actually start to lose it. You know, if you have a headache 5 days a week, or you have migraines twice a month, 3 times a month, or gastrointestinal pain every time you eat, how much is it worth to get rid of it? I mean, how much more are you going to enjoy life? People will spend $300 to go to a concert. Forget that. You're spending $300 for 2 hours of entertainment. I'd much rather spend $1,000 and get rid of my health issues so that I can enjoy the next 30 years.
Yep. So like one of the major symptoms that we were planning or thinking about talking about, because a lot of people complain, is headaches and migraines, because for many people, that's like the first manifestation of burnout. So
Yeah.
what's the difference between like headaches and migraines?
So a migraine is a specific type of headache. It is not the severity. People think, oh, I have a really bad headache over here.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say it's a migraine. It's not. Migraines are a very, very specific type of headache. And some of the more common symptoms is they'll usually be one-sided. They'll usually be sharp stabbing behind the eye. You'll usually have a prodrome, which is, tingling or flashing in the eye, or become hypersensitive, or nausea, usually 20 minutes to 30 minutes before you actually get the sharp stabbing pain in the eye. So that's much more of a migraine. And and headaches, there's a lot of different types of headaches. There could be a migraine, could be a cluster headache, could be a suboccipital headache, which starts at the base of your skull and wraps up. So there's a lot of different types of migraines. And the reason that there is such a link between headaches and burnout are several. I'm going to do migraines first because it's a little different from them. So growing up, when I was a teenager and right before I went to chiropractic school, I had the most horrific migraines ever. They lasted all through college, and they disappeared when I went to chiropractic school. And the reason they disappeared because when I went to chiropractic school, it was the first time I was really living on my own and cooking for myself. And I didn't have a lot of money, which, you're a student. Why would you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to make some choices. And one of the things is I love soda. It's horrible for you. I love soda. And this is years ago. And so I used to drink soda every day. And I used to eat candy all the time. Forget it. I was 20 years old. So like everyone else, hey, like crap. And what I noticed is that when I gave up the soda, when I gave up the crappy food, not because I was interested in health yet, but basically because processed food is so much more expensive than fruits, vegetables, and the healthy food. When I gave it up, my migraines almost completely disappeared. And later on, I wrote a couple of research papers on migraines. And what I realized was that migraines are caused by the liver's inability to detoxify endotoxins and exotoxins. So exotoxins are toxins we take in from our environment, perfume, chemicals in the air, cleaning products, beauty products, alcohol, foods we eat, all the stuff you guys test for, all the chemicals in packaging, all these different chemicals, those are exotoxins, and the body needs to break them down. But then you have endotoxins. Endotoxins are, once your hormones do their job in the body, the liver has to break them down in phase 1 and phase 2. And if your liver is compromised, it won't be able to do that. The toxins actually escape the liver, they irritate the blood vessels, and they'll trigger a migraine. And I came to this conclusion because why was I getting headaches from the foods I was eating. It was obviously the chemicals in there. But why do women get migraines 4 times more frequently than men? And why do they get it around their menstrual cycle? Because around your menstrual cycle is you produce 4 times the amount of hormones. And if your liver is compromised, it just can't handle the extra burden. Mm-hmm. And so, and this is all going back to burnout, don't worry. So I realized before genetic testing that the reason it runs in the family is there must be a genetic flaw that slows down liver toxicity. And it turned out years later, like 20 years later after I published my paper, that the gene is called C677T, and it has to do with turning folic acid into methotetrahydrofolic acid, the active form of it. And so when we treat patients with migraines, we clean up their diet, we strengthen their liver's ability to detoxify, and we support this genetic flaw. And that would help most of the patients. But because migraines are so painful and so stressful and really burden somebody on a core level, I mean, you lose days at a time. I've had women who are in bed 25 days out of the month. And it takes a huge strain on you. And the migraines basically become the cause of the burnout. And so now when we treat people with migraines, everybody's been suffering. It's not like I have an ache, 3 or 4 for a couple of days. These people have pain 8, 9, 10, 4 or 5 days in a row. Psychologically, that prodrome, when it starts, when they start getting, people go into panics. I know people who just get on the floor and start crying because they know the next 3 days are just excruciating pain. So the migraines themselves become the cause of the burnout. Mm-hmm. And in order to actually heal them 100%, we'll clean out their liver, we'll support the genetic flaw, and then we have to support the adrenal glands so that we're actually helping them recover from the burnout. And this is why nutrition is really important for them. And then we have to do that technique NET to sort of desensitize them to the trauma of the burnout. Because a lot of times I will fix somebody with migraines or a chronic health issue, and they had the burnout, and then we have to do this emotional work with them because in the back of their head, they still think that as soon as they get a symptom, they're going to have a problem. So that's how burnout is related to migraines. Now, when it's just a general headache, like a suboccipital headache or a cluster headache, okay, it's a little different. So in the first instance, migraines caused burnout. In headaches, it's the other way around. The burnout causes the headaches a lot of times. And I'm talking in generals. There's always unique cases, but in general, this is what we see. So you're under a lot of stress at work or life or everything. It doesn't make a difference. It could be, so your body's producing a lot of cortisol. And again, when it's producing cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all the other hormones, one of the things is it expects you to be in a fight or to run away. That's why it's called fight or flight. And when that happens, it causes ligament laxity. Okay? And the reason it causes ligaments to relax is if you get hit, you want to be relaxed so that you can absorb the hit and keep going. If you're going to run, you want loose muscles, loose ligaments so that you get a lot of speed. The problem with this is that this was supposed to be a short duration. But when it's chronic, low-grade stress and those ligaments become loose, okay, it allows the joints in the neck and how the neck and skull attach to become loose. And when that happens, the occiput and the neck move out of place, and that will then start to trigger a headache. Mm-hmm. And people will go, oh, I'm stressed at work. Oh, I have so much neck pain. And they have it wrong. They think it's working at the computer, which doesn't help, and stretching over that's causing the headaches. It's wrong. It's the chronic emotional stress and physical stress they're under that's allowing the ligaments to become loose, and then whatever else they're doing becomes the trigger. So it's the burnout that's causing the ligament laxity, and we need to treat that. One of the ways you can tell if you have ligament laxity and burnout is if you wake up with a headache. Anybody who wakes up with a headache almost always has ligament laxity due to burnout. That's one of the biggest things. Can be a toxic problem, but most of the time we see that they have ligament laxity due to burnout. If you exercise today and you feel great, and tomorrow you feel achy and sore and have a headache, that's another sign that you have burnout causing ligament laxity. So there's a lot of signs that when we talk for patients that sort of give us an idea if they're burned out and if it's triggering their headaches. One of the things that I always say is, you go to your family doctor, they say on average, you have about 8 minutes with them, 6 to 8 minutes for them to greet you, ask you what's going on, and write a script. That's it. And that is not enough time to really get into a conversation of what's going on with you. A lot of times people don't want to, when you sit down, they go like, how do you, hey, how are you doing today? What's the first thing people say to you? Right? I'm doing great. Oh, things are all right. It takes a few minutes for them to go, oh,
Yep.
And if you're don't have that couple of minutes to find out if people are really under stress, if there's really an issue going on, you're going to miss the early signs that they're getting burnt out, that they're having anxiety, that they're having sleep issues, that there's something going on. And you're not going to, a doctor's not going to pick it up until they go, how are you doing? And they go, I'm miserable. You're not going to get that early part where you could turn it around like this. What you're going to get is the people who are in crisis. And this is what's wrong with our healthcare. We should be screening people for burnout and stress all the time, because if we start there, what we'll be able to do is stop these greater problems from happening.
Yeah. So then in terms of like addressing it through nutrition, like what's an ideal meal for you? If you're like trying to like combat with headaches and then potential burnout, like can we, what is the ideal meal that can kind of supplement and it can help?
So it's the great thing about health is that it's really not that complicated. And it really is not. I mean, one of the things you want to do is eliminate toxins. If you're eating highly processed foods, if you're buying a lot of things in plastic containers and plastic bags, if you're using a microwave and putting those just put it in and steam it. If you're using that, you might as well just drink Drano. I mean, it's literally that bad. There's nobody who's going to be eating, a rice pilaf from a plastic bag heated up in their microwave that isn't going to end up with toxins in their system. So that's step one, is you need to start eliminating toxins. And I don't care if it's in the food you eat, it's got to be eliminated. If it's in the cleaning products you use, there's no real advantage to using toxic chemical cleaners when there's orange and lemon zest that you could use, that when there's vinegar. I freaking just pour vinegar on everything and then wipe it down. It's freaking awesome. It's a great way to just clean things up. And you don't have to worry about if you want to eat off the counter. So there's two parts to it. You've got to detox your environment. You got to get rid of the cleaning products that are toxic. You got to get rid of the foods that are toxic. Get rid of plastic containers. Switch to glass. You need to start eliminating, stop using plastic water containers. Buy yourself a nice stainless steel one or a nice glass one. Start making these choices because they all add up. The next part is, again, get rid of the highly processed foods and switch to healthy foods. Okay. Now, healthy foods to me, and is I like a keto diet or paleo diet. I think when I'm talking to my patients and I want to make them healthy, the things I tell them are, you need to eliminate gluten and dairy in your diet for the most part. You need to limit your carbohydrates to about 35 grams a day, which is not much. It's one, maybe two pieces of fruit. And then you want to fill in the rest of the calories with healthy fat and grass-fed meat. And that lowers the burden. Here's a interesting kind of fact of why this works so well, especially for my patients. So you're burnt out, and we've already talked about how that stresses your adrenal glands, and they're going. Well, eating processed foods and carbohydrates in general just adds to that burden because, again, you're releasing cortisol, which is releasing glucagon from the liver, which puts a lot of glucose in your blood. And then you eat carbohydrates, which are just putting more glucose in the blood. And you've already built up insulin resistance. So you're just adding to the problem. One of the quickest and easiest ways to reset the system and lower your glucose levels and start to reduce insulin resistance, which also leads to inflammation, cardiovascular disease, is to eat a extremely, extremely high protein diet, because a high protein diet doesn't add any glucose to the blood system. And what it'll do is it'll give the adrenal glands a chance to relax, and it'll reduce the insulin. It'll start to reduce the insulin resistance. So grass-fed beef, chicken, pork. I'm a big fish guy. I like that. Yeah, I always say, I'm 57 and I'm like an old Jewish man. And, if you're in like New York City, you go to a deli and there's always that old Jewish guy, he's like 80 years old, sitting in the corner eating a plate of sardines. Do you know why he's eating why it's only old Jewish men who eat sardines? It's because they got to be old because they were eating the sardines. And they're small fish. They don't have a lot of heavy metals in them. They've got a lot of good fat in them. And this is what we need. So when we're talking to patients, we want a really clean diet. You can have fish, you can have chicken, you can have meat, you can have pork. Try and have it grass-fed, try and have it organic, and you can have as much as you want. Again, I think 200 cholesterol is a scam, so I'm not really worried about it. But, and then the next part of it is organic, maybe one or two pieces of organic fruit. Berries tend to have a lower carbohydrate rate. Try and keep it under 35 grams of carbohydrates a day. And then I like fats. Coconut fat, olive oil fat. These are really, and fats from fish. These are really great for your system. They calm the nervous system down. They help the brain work. They make your skin subtle. They help your brain function. And they're good for muscle strength. And it's good for relaxation. So that's kind of the diet we want to get on. The other thing is you want to limit caffeine. I like coffee. I let my patients have 8 ounces of coffee a day, no more. I do not allow soda. And you are the biggest fool in the world if you're anything that's promoted by the media, the government, the food industry is a lie. There are no good low-fat foods. There are no good artificial sweeteners. I mean, there's going to be, I do a lot of consulting for companies, and there's going to be aspartame, which people have been talking about for years as a toxin, a neurotoxin. Is going to actually, in the next 6 months, even the FDA is going to come out and make all foods with aspartame have a black warning on it, just like a cigarette. That's how toxic it really is. So we want healthy foods. We want natural foods. We like meats of all types, and we want to seriously eliminate gluten, soy, dairy, corn, anything artificial. And you better be drinking 80 ounces of filtered or natural water. And that's a great way to start going. Couple of other things. Should I keep going?
Please. I know we're running way over time. If you have time, I mean, these are like such great tips.
So some of the other things we really like people to do is get outside. Okay. Walk outside, get sunlight on your face 20 minutes a day. That's really important for mental health. It's really good for getting you to sort of keep in touch with the earth, the change in seasons. So many people don't go outside. The body doesn't know the change of seasons. We like people to do grounding. So if you go walk outside barefoot, it's a little rough to do in the cold, but if you could walk outside barefoot and touch the grass, touch the earth, there's a lot of good benefits to that. The earth has its own electromagnetic energy that you can draw from, but also, the idea of isolating yourself from germs, bacteria, viruses, doesn't work. You really need to have some sort of exposure to it so that your immune system knows what it's fighting. I've done martial arts in the past, and one of the ways you train for somebody attacking you is you get attacked. It's a controlled attack, but that's how your body, you learn to fight it off. It's the same thing. You need to be outside. Kids need to be with other kids. You need to play in the dirt. You need to get in touch with the earth so that your body has some idea of what the hell it's trying to do. And then sleep. People need to put their phones down at least an hour before they want to go to bed. I guarantee you, whatever you're watching on TikTok, whatever you're watching on Instagram will be there tomorrow. And if your office is calling, you shouldn't be looking at the phone that late anyway. You need to put the phone down. If possible, try and turn the TV off, and either read or have sex, and you'll sleep so much better. Those are my hits.
Love it. Love it. Okay. I know we ran way over, but I still want you to talk a little bit about your resilience program because it's really cool. What is it? How can someone join? And then, you also offer consultations. What is a session with you?
Right. Sure. So there's two different things. So what we do is you can private message me. You can DM me if I offer what's called the Resiliency Program. It's a free program. Right now, basically, we started the Resiliency Program years ago for veterans. I was talking about how we were using clinical nutrition and NET, hands-on work, to help people with anxiety, depression, NET. But what I developed with my partner is a automated system where you go in, you answer, I think it's 31 questions that I designed, and it goes through an algorithm and will tell people how burnt out they are, from no burnout to chronic burnout. And then it does a couple of interesting things. It'll tell them very specifically what type of nutritional supplements to take and at what dosage, to sort of start to rebuild them. And then what it does is every day you get an email with either a breathing exercise, a 4-minute yoga stretch, very, very simple stuff that sort of starts to push you back into that parasympathetic, relaxed mode, so that we're reinforcing you nutritionally to get healthier, and then we're making lifestyle changes. And then you also have access to several hundred videos if you want to watch more on breathing, on yoga, on healthy lifestyle. We have hundreds of hours of health experts all talking about how they deal with their patients with burnout. So you have this huge access to a huge amount of information for rebuilding yourself. And, you know, right now it's free for anybody. You just have to DM me telling me that you like it, and we'll get you started with it. So I do telehealth appointments all around the world. It's kind of interesting, and it's my real expertise is, again, I treat the untreatable. I treat the chronic illness, the chronic pain that nobody has an answer for. And the way I do that is with a consultation. I really ask the pointed questions, not just your symptoms, but where did they come from? And a lot of people will give you the answer. When we deal with somebody with fibromyalgia, you'll find out before they had fibromyalgia, there was some sort of either physical or emotional trauma before that. And the way to fix the fibromyalgia is to deal with the physical or emotional trauma and then rebuild them. People with sinusitis or anybody with Epstein-Barr, Lyme's, long haulers, sinusitis, these chronic infections that never seem to go away, no matter how much medication people take, or, you know, a lot of times that'll be linked to a biofilm that got missed. Most medical doctors have no idea that biofilms exist in the body. They may know they exist in a medical equipment, but they don't realize it exists in the body. So we'll break down the biofilm that's protecting infections that allow for increased, people who just continuously have flares. Interestingly, last year I published a paper on periodic fever syndrome. And just to tell you how crazy this is. So periodic fever syndrome is these kids every 2 months or whatever would end up with a fever for 3 days for no reason. And the only documented reasons that were found were for genetic defects. And last year we published a paper, peer-reviewed, and we documented the first periodic fever syndrome that was healed by eliminating biofilms, and really well received. And again, this is a child that's been to, CHOPS Hospital, multiple family physicians, and nobody had an answer. It's no big deal. The answer is to give a steroid when it happens. And yet after 6 months of treating the biofilm, he's never had a fever again. So when you look at a patient as a whole and you go beyond their immediate symptoms and go backwards and you listen to their history of what's going on with their family, you're able to, a lot of times we're able to find the core reason, the core problem that gets missed. And it gets missed because people don't have time to listen. People don't know what to ask for, and they're not used to dealing with difficult cases. Most family physicians will treat, and there's nothing against family physicians. There's a bunch of them in my family. But most family physicians, they're there to treat 80% of the people with simple problems. You have high blood pressure, here's medication. You have a yeast infection, here's a medication. They're not there to do deep diagnosis. And if they get stuck, they hand it off to a specialist. The problem with a specialist is they're only going to look at whatever their specialty is. And that's where the whole thing goes awry. So I'm known as a burnout expert, so people always call me with burnout issues. And even though I am a burnout expert, and even though I do a lot of work with adrenals, one thing that I always do is a full history. I never say, oh, it's that. Because I got to tell you, burnout just means your system can no longer handle physical or emotional stress without having more physical or emotional stress. It doesn't necessarily tell us what was the trigger, because it could be a parasite, could be bacteria, could be a virus, could be emotional, could be toxins in your environment. That's so big that gets missed all the time. And people don't even know it exists. One of the things we check on people when we come in our office is we'll have them smell Clorox. And if they smell Clorox and their arm goes weak, or some people will immediately start to get a headache because it's so toxic. People don't realize Clorox is mustard gas. It's what they used in World War I to kill people. And, people are sitting there cleaning and it's on their hands and they don't even think about it. So a lot of times it's environmental toxins, it's cleaning products, it's the beauty products that are triggering stress that in the body that then leads to burnout. So I'm like a little detective. I like puzzles. My wife always laughs at me because I do, what the GMATs are? They're like the tests to get into college. I do those math problems just for fun. So everyone always laughs at me, but I like puzzles. So I look at each patient as a little puzzle. That's why I don't mind working. I find it pretty entertaining when people are telling me what's going on, and then they say that key word or two, and the whole thing comes into place. So it's a lot of fun.
No, thank you so much for what you do. And then also, being willing to go way over time and giving us all this information. But thank you so much. This is so great. And then we have like a great turnout today with so many audience too. So I encourage everybody to follow Dr. Stephen Zodkoy. So like, great content. This is so awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to basically dominate the whole conversation.
No, this is great information. I mean, everybody needs to hear these things. So no, it's wonderful. I really appreciate you willing to spend the time.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.